The bullets stop. 7 bodies lie motionless in the favela alley. Lucas Silva feels the blood pooling under him, tastes copper in his mouth, knows he has maybe 2 minutes before he bleeds out from the bullet in his chest. And that's when he sees him, a figure made of impossible light standing in the gun smoke, radiating power that makes the gang war around him seem like a child's game. Jesus Christ has come to the massacre, not to judge, not yet, but to offer one final choice: die and face eternal judgment for the lives he's destroyed, or surrender everything and live. You're probably wondering how a 23-year-old drug dealer from Rio de Janeiro's most dangerous favela ended up bleeding out in an alley, watching Jesus Christ materialize in the gunpowder smoke while police and rival gang members fought over his dying body. Let me take you back to when Lucas Silva was just a kid growing up in Complexo do Alemao, watching older boys count money that could feed his family for a year. Back to when 15,000 reais from one drug delivery seemed like freedom instead of a prison sentence. Back to before the violence, before the bodies, before the moment when Lucas realized that success in the drug trade only leads to 2 places: prison or the grave. If you or someone you know is experiencing abuse, pause this video. I'm putting resources in the description that could save a life. Rio de Janeiro is 2 cities. There's the Rio the world knows, Copacabana Beach, Christ the Redeemer statue, carnival celebrations, beauty and joy. And there's the other Rio, the favelas that cling to the hillsides, the communities controlled by drug factions, the daily warfare between gangs and police, the children who grow up with gunfire as their lullaby. Lucas Silva was born in this second Rio, in Complexo do Alemao, one of the city's largest and most dangerous favela complexes, where the Comando Vermelho drug faction ruled with iron discipline, where police raids meant warfare, where young boys learned to count bullets before they learned to count change. He was 23 years old and a soldado, a soldier in the CV's drug trafficking operation. He'd been in the trade since he was 14. He'd sold drugs, collected debts, enforced territory, and done things that would haunt most people forever, but that Lucas had learned to push down deep and ignore. He'd made money, not rich by Rio's wealthy standards, but rich by favela standards. Enough for gold chains, expensive sneakers, respect on the streets, enough to support his mother and younger sister, enough to feel like he'd escaped poverty even though he was really just trading one prison for another. But the trade has rules, and Lucas had broken one of the most important. He'd skimmed money from a major delivery. Just 5,000 reais pocket change to the faction leadership, but enough to buy his mother medicine she desperately needed. They'd found out, and in the drug trade, there's only one punishment for stealing from the faction. This is the story of what happened on the night of the 17th of April 2023, when Lucas Silva and 6 other CV soldados were ambushed by rival TCP, Terceiro Comando Puro gang members, in a narrow favela alley. 7 men went down in 30 seconds of automatic gunfire. 6 died. Lucas survived, but not by luck, by divine intervention. This is the story of how Jesus Christ appeared to a dying drug dealer in the middle of a gang massacre and offered him something he'd never had before: a choice, a real choice. Continue down the path that led to this blood-soaked alley and face eternal judgment, or surrender everything: his money, his reputation, his pride, his life, and follow a different way. This isn't a sanitized testimony about someone who made mistakes. This is raw, violent truth about the drug trade's reality, about the lives destroyed by trafficking, about the spiritual warfare that happens in places most people never see. And it's about how God's mercy reaches even into the darkest alleys of Rio's favelas, even to dying drug dealers, even in the middle of massacre. Lucas Silva was born in 2,000 inches Complexo do Alemao, a massive favela complex in Rio's North Zone housing over 200,000 people. His mother, Maria, worked as a cleaner in wealthy neighborhoods in the South Zone, a 2-hour commute each way for wages that barely covered rent and food. His father had disappeared when Lucas was 2, killed in a police raid, though the details remained unclear. Maria never talked about it. In the favelas, you learn not to ask too many questions about death. Lucas grew up in a small house, concrete walls, corrugated metal roof, 3 rooms for him, his mother, and his younger sister Gabriela. They had electricity, sometimes illegally tapped, running water when it worked, and a view of the hillside packed with thousands of similar houses stacked on top of each other like a human beehive. It wasn't the worst poverty in Rio. They had shelter, they had food most days, but Lucas watched his mother work herself to exhaustion for wages that wouldn't buy the shoes other kids wore, wouldn't afford the phones they carried, wouldn't provide the life Lucas saw on TV and in the wealthy neighborhoods where his mother cleaned mansions. And he watched the boys who worked for the Comando Vermelho, the CV-controlled Complexo do Alemao had for decades. They ran the drug trade, collected taxes from local businesses, maintained order, their version of it, and provided employment for young men who had few other options. The CV soldiers were visible everywhere. Young men, teenagers really, wearing expensive clothes, carrying guns, riding motorcycles, counting money that Lucas's mother would never see in a year of work. When Lucas was 12, a boy named Rodrigo, 17 years old, a CV soldado, moved in 3 houses down. Rodrigo wore gold chains, Nike sneakers that cost 1,000 reais, and carried a 9mm pistol openly. One day, Rodrigo saw Lucas watching and smiled. "You like these?" He gestured at his sneakers. "I made enough last week to buy 3 pairs. You work hard in school like your mama wants. Maybe in 10 years you make enough to buy 1 pair. Or you work smart, work for me, you buy these next month. Your choice, Malek." Lucas was 12. The math was simple. School had never felt relevant. His teachers were overwhelmed, the education inadequate, the promise of a good job laughable when unemployment in the favelas ran over 30%. But drugs? Drugs were the only industry in the favela that was hiring, paying, and offering advancement. At 13, Lucas started as an olheiro, a lookout. His job was simple: watch for police, watch for rival factions, send warnings via radio when danger approached. He worked 4-hour shifts after school, earned 200 reais per week, more than his mother made in a week of full-time cleaning. Maria discovered the money and confronted him. "Lucas, where did this come from?" "I'm working," he said defensively, "helping the family." "Working for the faction?" Maria's voice broke. "Lucas, that life only ends 2 ways, prison or death." "I know," Lucas interrupted, "but Mama, look around. What other life is there? You work yourself to death for nothing. I can make real money. I can help you. I can help Gabi." "I don't want money from drugs," Maria said, crying now. "I want my son alive. I want my son with a soul." But Lucas was 13 and thought he was invincible. He kept the money, kept the work, and graduated to bigger responsibilities. By 15, he was an avião, a delivery boy, transporting drugs to customers throughout the favela and into the South Zone's wealthier neighborhoods. The pay increased to 1,000 reais per week. The risk increased to police raids, rival gang ambushes, the constant possibility of arrest or death. By 17, he was a soldado, a soldier, armed and responsible for territory control, debt collection, and enforcement. The pay increased to 3,000 reais per week. The violence increased, proportionally. By 23, Lucas had been in the trade for 10 years. He'd made money. He'd gained respect on the streets. He'd bought his mother a better house, which she'd reluctantly accepted. He'd helped his sister Gabriela stay in school, go to university, but he'd also seen things that changed him. Watched friends die in police raids, participated in beatings of people who disrespected the faction, delivered drugs to addicts whose lives were being destroyed, fired weapons at rival gang members, couldn't say for certain if he'd killed anyone, but the probability was high. The violence became normal, death became routine. Conscience became something you buried deep or you couldn't function. Lucas told himself he was surviving, making the best of limited options, supporting his family. What else was he supposed to do? Work minimum wage earning 500 reais per month? Watch his mother continue killing herself cleaning wealthy people's houses? The justifications came. Easy. Until they didn't.
Before we continue, if you believe in second chances and the power of faith, type restore in the comments right now. Let your voice be the spark of hope for a family in need. Show the world your faith in action.
Being a soldado in the CV meant living by strict rules. Never steal from the faction. Stealing meant death. No exceptions. Never talk to police. Cooperation meant torture and death. Respect the hierarchy. The gerente, manager, dono, owner, and ultimately the faction leadership's word was law. Protect the territory. Rival factions were the enemy. Police were the enemy. Only the CV mattered. Never touch the product. Selling drugs was business. Using drugs was weakness punished by demotion or death. Lucas followed the rules. He was a good soldier, reliable, disciplined, not controlled by drugs or alcohol like some others. The leadership trusted him with larger deliveries, more responsibility, more money. But the life was exhausting. The constant vigilance, the knowledge that every day might be your last. The police raids that came without warning, armored vehicles, automatic weapons, helicopters overhead, soldiers treating everyone in the favela as enemy combatants. Lucas had been in Sumtered, 3 major raids, had hidden in sewers, crawled through tight spaces, run through gunfire, had watched police shoot first and ask questions never, had seen innocent people, children, elderly, caught in crossfire because they lived in the wrong place. The violence created a siege mentality, us versus them, the faction versus the world, survival at any cost. But lately, the last few months, something had been shifting in Lucas, a nagging feeling that this life was leading nowhere, that the money didn't matter if you didn't live to spend it, that the respect meant nothing if it was based on fear rather than genuine honor. His sister Gabriella was 20 now, in university studying to be a nurse. She'd escaped. She'd found a different path. And every time Lucas saw her, he felt a mix of pride and shame. Pride that she'd succeeded. Shame that he was still trapped in the trade. Lucas, she'd said to him 3 weeks ago, you need to get out. Before it's too late. You've made money. You've helped Mama. But this life is going to kill you. I can't just leave, Lucas had said. That's not how it works. You leave the faction. They think you're going to talk to police. They can't risk it. So you stay until you die? Lucas had no answer, because that was the truth. You stayed until you died, or until you went to prison, which was just slower death. But then came the mistake that would change everything. Lucas was given a major delivery assignment, 5 kilos of cocaine from the main storage point in Alemao to a distribution point in Mangueira, another favela across town. Street value, approximately 200,000 reais. This was trust. Major deliveries went to reliable soldados. Lucas had done dozens of these runs, never a problem. But this time, he arrived home after the delivery to find his mother Maria collapsed in their small kitchen, struggling to breathe. Mama! Lucas caught her before she hit the floor. What's wrong? My heart, Maria gasped. The medication. I ran out, couldn't afford refill. Lucas called an ambulance, knowing it would take hours to reach the favela if it came at all. He helped his mother to their neighbor's car and drove her to the nearest public hospital. The emergency room was chaos, hundreds of people waiting, overwhelmed staff, hours-long delays. Lucas waited 6 hours before a doctor saw Maria. Your mother has severe hypertension, the doctor said clinically. She needs medication immediately. Without it, she risks stroke or heart attack. Give her the medication, Lucas demanded. The public health system doesn't have this medication in stock currently. You'll need to purchase it privately. How much? 5,000 reais for a 3-month supply. 5,000 reais. Lucas had maybe 2,000 in savings money his mother didn't know about. Drug money he'd been hiding. The doctor left. Maria lay in the hospital bed, looking fragile and old. She was only 45 but looked 60, from decades of hard labor and stress. Mama, I'm getting your medication, Lucas said. Lucas, no, Maria said weakly. Don't do anything stupid. I'll be okay. You won't be okay without medication. I'm getting it. Lucas left the hospital with a terrible choice forming in his mind. He needed 5,000 reais. He didn't have it, but he knew where there was money. The delivery he'd just completed, he'd been given 210,000 reais to transport. He'd delivered 205,000, kept the extra 5,000 as safety margin in case of problems during transport. That safety margin was standard procedure. Soldados always kept a small cushion for emergencies, paying off a cop who stopped them, replacing product if something went wrong. But Lucas hadn't needed it this time. The delivery had gone smoothly, and he was supposed to return that extra 5,000 to the gerente. If Lucas kept it, bought his mother's medication, he'd be stealing from the faction, breaking the #1 rule, the rule that meant death. But if he didn't, his mother might die. Lucas made his choice. He bought the medication, gave it to his mother, told the gerente the delivery had gone perfectly, no problems, no extra money. The lie felt necessary, justified. His mother's life was worth more than faction money. For 2 weeks, Lucas thought he'd gotten away with it. The gerente hadn't questioned the delivery amount. Everything seemed fine, but in the drug trade, money always gets counted. Discrepancies always get investigated, and someone eventually noticed that Lucas's delivery was 5,000 reais short compared to what left the storage point. Lucas was called to a meeting with his gerente Paulo, a 30-year-old CV leader who'd risen through the ranks with a reputation for ruthless discipline. "Lucas," Paulo said, his voice calm but cold, "we need to talk about your delivery 3 weeks ago." Lucas's stomach dropped. "What about it?" "The money doesn't match. 5,000 short. Must be a counting error at the source," Lucas said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I delivered exactly what I was given." "Don't lie to me," Paulo interrupted, his voice harder now. "We've counted 3 times. The money left our storage. You were the only one who touched it, and it arrived 5,000 short. Where is it?" Lucas considered continuing the lie, but he saw in Paulo's eyes that the decision was already made. They knew lying would just make it worse. "My mother needed medication," Lucas said quietly. "She was dying. I used the money to save her life. I was going to pay it back." "You stole from the faction," Paulo said, flatly. "You know the rules." "Paulo, please," Lucas said, hearing the desperation in his own voice. "It was my mother. 5,000 reais is nothing to the faction." "It's not about the amount," Paulo said. "It's about the rule. You steal, you die. Everyone knows this. If I make an exception for you, others think they can steal too. The whole system breaks down. So what? You're going to kill me over 5,000 reais. I'm going to kill you over betraying the faction," Paulo corrected. "But Lucas, because you've been a good soldier, I'm giving you an option. You have until tonight to bring me 50,000 reais, 10 times what you stole. You do that, we call it even. You keep your life. 50,000 reais. Lucas didn't have 50,000 reais. No way to get it in one day. The amount was deliberately impossible. "And if I can't get the money?" Lucas asked, though he knew the answer. "Then tonight, you and your crew have a delivery in Mangueira, TCP territory, and I'm not sending backup." Lucas understood immediately. Paulo was setting them up, sending Lucas and other soldados into enemy territory without support. The TCP would ambush them. Lucas would die in gang warfare, rather than obvious execution. Cleaner that way. Less questions from the rest of the crew. "Paulo, 50,000 reais by 6 p.m., or you make the delivery," Paulo said, ending the conversation. "Your choice." Lucas left knowing he was dead. He had maybe 8,000 reais total. No way to get 50,000 in 8 hours. He considered running, leaving Rio, disappearing, but the faction had long reach, and running would put his mother and sister at risk. He'd made his choice when he stole the money. Now he'd face the consequences. At 9 p.m., Lucas and 6 other soldados rode motorcycles into Mangueira Favela on a delivery. The other guys didn't know it was a setup. They thought it was a normal run. Lucas knew better. He said a quiet prayer, the first prayer he'd said since childhood as they entered enemy territory. "God, if you're real, if you're listening, I know I don't deserve mercy, but please, protect my mother and sister. Don't let them suffer for my mistakes." 10 minutes later, the shooting started. 9:17 p.m., Mangueira Favela. The TCP ambush was perfectly executed. Lucas and the 6 other CV soldados rode their motorcycles into a narrow alley in Mangueira, supposedly to meet a contact for a delivery, but there was no contact. Only TCP soldiers waiting on rooftops and in doorways with automatic weapons. The first burst of gunfire hit before Lucas even registered what was happening. The soldado riding beside him, Marcos, 20 years old, had a baby daughter, went down instantly, his motorcycle crashing, his body limp before it hit the pavement. "Ambush!" someone screamed. Lucas dove off his motorcycle as bullets tore through the air. The sound was deafening. AK-47 seconds, pistols, shotguns, all firing at once in the confined space. Spent shell casings rained down like metal hail. Lucas hit the ground hard behind a dumpster, pulling his 9mm pistol. Around him, the other soldados were taking cover, returning fire, shouting coordinates over their radios, calling for backup that Lucas knew wouldn't come. The firefight lasted maybe 30 seconds, but in combat, 30 seconds is eternity. Lucas fired blindly around the dumpster, not really aiming, just suppressing return fire, trying to create space to escape. Beside him, another soldado, Raphael, took multiple rounds to the chest and went down screaming. "Fall back!" someone yelled. "Fall back!" But there was nowhere to fall back to. The alley was a kill box. TCP soldiers had blocked both exits. They'd planned this perfectly. Lucas tried to run, sprinting for a doorway that might offer cover. He almost made it. The bullet caught him in the left shoulder, spinning him around. He stumbled, tried to keep running, then felt a second impact, this one in his chest, just left of center. The world went strange. Sound became muffled. Vision narrowed. Lucas's legs stopped working, and he fell hard onto the concrete, his gun skittering away. He lay there gasping, tasting blood, feeling warmth spreading across his chest. He couldn't breathe properly. The bullet must have hit his lung. Each breath was agony, and he could hear a wet, bubbling sound coming from his chest. Around him, the gunfire stopped. The ambush was over. 7 CV soldados had entered the alley. Lucas could see 6 bodies lying motionless. He assumed he was the 7th. His vision was getting dark around the edges. He knew this feeling: blood loss, shock, dying. He'd seen it before in others. Now it was happening to him. Lucas tried to move but couldn't, tried to call for help but only managed a weak gurgle. Blood filled his mouth. He heard voices, TCP soldiers approaching, checking bodies, making sure everyone was dead. "This one's still alive," someone said, and Lucas felt a boot on his shoulder, rolling him onto his back. The pain was excruciating. A TCP soldier stood over him, AK-47, pointed at Lucas's face. The soldier was young, maybe 18, wearing a TCP bandana, his face hard. "Any last words, CV trash?" the soldier asked. Lucas tried to speak, but only blood came out. He was dying. This was it. 23 years old, dying in an alley over 5,000 reais, over a mistake, over a life wasted in the drug trade. The TCP soldier raised his weapon, finger on the trigger, and that's when everything changed.
If this moment is touching your heart, share your story or a prayer request in the comments below. Someone watching may need the encouragement only you can give. Tag a friend who could use this message of hope today.
The light came first, not from street lamps or flashlights, but from nowhere and everywhere. Golden, warm light that seemed to emanate from the air itself, growing steadily brighter, driving back the darkness of the favela night. The TCP soldier stumbled backward, his weapon dropping. "Que isso? What is this?" Lucas, lying on his back in a pool of his own blood, watched as the light took form. A figure emerged, a man in simple white robes that seemed woven from light itself. Tall, powerful, with a presence that made the gang warfare around him seem like children's games. Jesus Christ stood in the middle of the massacre site, radiating authority and power that was undeniable, overwhelming, terrifying in its holiness. The TCP soldiers scattered, running, dropping their weapons, shouting in panic. Police sirens were approaching in the distance. Someone had called in the shooting, but this presence was something far more frightening than cops. Jesus looked down at Lucas, and his eyes held both infinite compassion and absolute truth. "Lucas Silva," he said, and his voice filled the entire alley despite being spoken softly. "You are dying. You have perhaps 90 seconds before your heart stops, and then you will stand before my Father's judgment for every life you've harmed, every soul you've helped destroy through the drug trade, every moment of violence you've participated in." Lucas tried to speak but couldn't. Blood filled his mouth, his chest, his lungs. "I know what you're thinking," Jesus continued. "You think you had no choice. You think the favela gave you no options. You think you were just surviving, just helping your family, just doing what you had to do." He knelt beside Lucas, and up close, his presence was even more overwhelming holiness that exposed every sin, every lie, every justification Lucas had ever made. But Lucas, you had choices at every step. The first time you worked as an old hero, you chose money over morality. The first time you, quote, delivered drugs, you chose profit over the addicts whose lives would be destroyed. The first time you collected a debt through violence, you chose the faction over humanity. Step by step, choice by choice, you built a life that led here, dying in an alley, blood on your hands and on your soul, tears mixed with the blood on Lucas's face. And now you face judgment, Jesus said. Your mother prayed for you every day for 10 years, begged me to save you before it was too late, and here we are 90 seconds before your heart stops. The last possible moment, the final choice. Lucas managed to choke out one word, please. Please what? Jesus asked, his eyes boring into Lucas's soul. Please save you? Please ignore the destruction you've participated in? Please let you into heaven despite a life lived in service of death? Lucas shook his head weakly. He had no defense, no justification. He was guilty. He knew it. Please. Lucas tried again. Forgive. Jesus' expression softened slightly, though his authority remained absolute. You want forgiveness? Real forgiveness? That costs everything, Lucas. Everything. Your life as you know it ends here. Your reputation, your money, your pride, it all dies in this alley tonight. And if I save your body, you will spend every remaining day of your life serving me instead of the faction, testifying to the truth, warning others, becoming something completely different than what you've been. Lucas nodded weakly. Anything. He'd give anything to be saved. Say it, Jesus commanded. Tell me you surrender everything. With his last conscious breath, Lucas whispered, I surrender everything. Jesus, save me. And Jesus placed his hand on Lucas's chest wound. The pain disappeared instantly. The bleeding stopped. Lucas gasped a full, deep breath that filled his lungs without the bubbling, drowning sensation. You're not dying tonight, Jesus said. I'm sending you back. But Lucas, remember this moment. Remember what you saw. Remember what you felt. Because you will testify to this, and many will be saved through your story. The light intensified until Lucas couldn't see anything else. He felt his consciousness fading, not dying but transitioning, being pulled back from death's edge. His last thought before passing out, I've been given a second chance I don't deserve. I can't waste it. Lucas woke in a hospital bed in a public ward, his body wrapped in bandages, machines beeping around him. For a moment, he was disoriented. Where was he? What happened? Then, the memories flooded back. The ambush, the bullets, dying on the pavement, Jesus appearing in the massacre site, the light, the choice, the surrender. Lucas's hands went to his chest, feeling for the bullet wound. There was pain, bandages, but he was alive. He was breathing. You're awake, a voice said. Lucas turned his head to see his mother Maria sitting in a chair beside his bed, looking exhausted but relieved. His sister, Gabriella, stood behind her. Mama? Lucas's voice was rough, weak. Maria started crying. The police called me 3 days ago, said you'd been in a shooting. When I got to the hospital, they said you'd been shot twice, that you'd lost massive blood, that you probably wouldn't survive. But you did, Gabriella added, her voice shaking with emotion. Lucas, they don't understand how. The doctors said the chest wound should have killed you. The bullet was millimeters from your heart. But somehow you're alive. Lucas looked at his sister. I know how. Jesus saved me. Maria and Gabriella exchanged glances, the look of people who loved him but thought trauma was making him talk crazy. Lucas, Maria said gently, you've been through something terrible. Mama, listen to me, Lucas interrupted, his voice gaining strength. I was dying. I felt it. I tasted death. And Jesus Christ appeared in that alley. He stood right in front of me. He told me I had 90 seconds before my heart stopped. He offered me a choice: die and face judgment for everything I've done, or surrender everything and live for him. Lucas, Gabriella started. I chose to surrender, Lucas continued. I told Jesus I'd give him everything, my life, my future, everything if he'd save me. And he touched my chest wound, and the pain stopped, and I'm alive, not by luck, By miracle, by mercy I don't deserve. Maria was crying harder now. You're really leaving the trade? Mama? There is no trade for me anymore, Lucas said firmly. That life is dead. I died in that alley. The Lucas Silva who was a CV soldado, he's gone. This is someone different. Someone who belongs to Jesus now. A police officer appeared in the doorway. Detective Cardoso, a 40-something investigator Lucas recognized from previous encounters in the favela. Lucas Silva, Cardoso said formally. I need to ask you some questions about the shooting in Mangueira 3 days ago. Lucas looked at his mother, then at the youths. Detective, I'll tell you everything, but first, I need to tell you who I am now. I'm not a CV soldado anymore. I'm done with that life. I'm testifying. I'm cooperating. Whatever you need to know, I'll tell you. Cardoso's eyes widened. Cooperation from a faction member was rare, usually meant death if the faction found out. You understand what you're saying? Cardoso asked carefully. If you testify, if you cooperate, the CV will consider you a traitor. They'll try to kill you. They already tried to kill me, Lucas said. That ambush was a setup. My own gerente sent me into that ambush because I stole money to buy my mother's medication. I was supposed to die there. Jesus decided I didn't. So I'm alive for a reason, and that reason isn't to keep serving the faction. Over the next hour, Lucas told Detective Cardoso everything. The faction structure, the drug routes, the storage locations, the names of leaders, everything he knew. It was the most dangerous thing he'd ever done, more dangerous than any shootout, because now he was marked for death by his former faction. There was no going back. After Cardoso left to process the information, Gabriela asked the question their mother was too afraid to voice. Lucas, what now? Where will you go? The CV will hunt you. I don't know, Lucas admitted. But Jesus didn't save me just to let me get killed by my old crew. He has a plan. I have to trust that. That evening, as Lucas lay in his hospital bed thinking about what came next, a man entered his room, mid-40s, kind face, wearing simple clothes. Lucas Silva? Yes. Who are you? My name is Pastor João. I run a ministry in Rocinha Favela, helping people leave gang life, find faith, rebuild their lives. Detective Cardoso called me, said you might need help. Lucas studied the man. Why would you help me? You don't know me. Because 20 years ago, I was you, Pastor João said simply. I was TCP, soldado, like you, got shot in a police raid, nearly died. Jesus appeared to me in the hospital and changed everything. I know what you're going through because I lived it. So what happened? After you left, the faction tried to kill me 3 times in the first year. I had to relocate, change my identity, live under protection. But I also started testifying to police, yes, but more importantly to other young men in the favelas, telling them the truth about where this life leads, warning them before it's too late. Pastor João sat in the chair Maria had vacated. Lucas, you've been given something rare, a second chance. Most men who go as deep into the trade as you did don't get out alive. Jesus pulled you back for a reason. The question is, what will you do with this new life? I want to testify, Lucas said. I want to warn others, but I don't know how. I don't know anything except the trade. Then you'll learn, Pastor João said. Our ministry has safe houses, programs to help former faction members transition, education, job training, discipleship. But Lucas, I need to be honest, this path is harder than the trade in many ways. You'll be poor again. You'll be vulnerable. The faction will try to kill you. Some people won't believe your transformation is real. You'll be tempted to go back. But if you're truly committed, if you really meant it when you told Jesus you surrender everything, then we can help you walk this path. Lucas thought about the vision he'd seen Jesus standing in the gunfire, offering him a choice. He'd made that choice. Now he had to live it. I'm committed, Lucas said. Whatever it takes. I'm done with that old life. I'm ready for whatever comes next. Pastor João smiled. Then welcome to freedom, brother. The real kind. Not the fake freedom the faction promises money and respect built on death, but actual freedom. It's going to be harder than you think, but it's also going to be more beautiful than you can imagine. Lucas's transition from drug dealer to follower of Christ was brutal. He spent 2 weeks in the hospital recovering from his wounds. During that time, Pastor João arranged for Lucas's mother and sister to be relocated to a different neighborhood. The CV knew Lucas had cooperated with police, and his family was at risk. When Lucas was discharged, he couldn't return to Complexo do Alemao. His former friends were now his enemies. Going back would mean immediate execution. Pastor João took Lucas to a safe house in Rocinha, another favela, but one controlled by a different faction where Lucas wasn't known. He shared a small room with 3 other former gang members who were also trying to rebuild their lives. The adjustment was shocking. Lucas had been making 3,000 reais per week in the trade. Now he made nothing, living on charity, eating donated food, wearing donated clothes. Everything he'd built, the money, the reputation, the identity, was gone. The first month, Lucas was angry. At God, at himself, at the situation. He'd been shot, betrayed, and now he was poor again, living like he'd never escaped poverty at all. This is freedom? Lucas complained to Pastor João. I'm broke. I'm vulnerable. I can't even see my mother without putting her at risk. How is this better? Pastor João was patient. Lucas, what did you have before? Money you couldn't spend without looking over your shoulder. Respect based on fear. A life with an expiration date. You were a slave pretending to be free. Now you're free, but it feels like slavery because you're learning to walk without chains. Lucas didn't understand. Not yet. But slowly, over weeks and months, something shifted. Pastor João's ministry put Lucas through an intensive discipleship program, Bible study, prayer, counseling, dealing with trauma and guilt. For the first time, Lucas confronted what he'd really done during his 10 years in the trade. The addicts, whose lives he'd helped destroy with drug deliveries. The families torn apart by the violence he'd participated in. The young boys he'd recruited into the trade, just like he'd been recruited. The guilt was crushing. How can God forgive me? Lucas asked Pastor João one night, breaking down. I've destroyed so many lives. I've got blood on my hands, maybe not directly, but I contributed to so much death and suffering. How is that forgivable? Because Jesus died for exactly that, Pastor João said. He didn't die for good, people who made small mistakes. He died for people like us, deep in sin, covered in guilt, deserving judgment. The cross was big enough for your sin, Lucas. You just have to accept that gift. Lucas began to understand grace, real grace, not the cheap version he'd heard about in childhood church. Grace that cost Jesus everything. Grace that was free for Lucas, but infinitely expensive. And he began to heal, not just physically, but spiritually. The nightmares decreased. The guilt transformed from crushing condemnation to humble gratitude. The anger at his circumstances shifted to appreciation for being alive. After 6 months, Lucas started working construction, minimum wage, earning in a month what he used to make in a week. It was humbling, but it was honest. He wasn't destroying lives to pay his bills, and he started testifying. Pastor João began bringing Lucas to speak at churches, schools, community centers, anywhere young men in the favelas might hear him. Lucas told his story without sanitizing it. The poverty that drove him to the trade, the money and false respect, the violence he'd participated in, the massacre where he nearly died, Jesus appearing in the gunfire, the choice, the transformation. I'm not going to lie to you, Lucas would tell teenage boys in favela community centers, boys who reminded him of his younger self. The trade looks attractive, the money is real, the respect seems real. I lived that life for 10 years, but here's what they don't tell you. The money doesn't matter if you don't live to spend it. The respect is just fear, and fear isn't love. Every day you wake up wondering if today's the day you die. Every friend you make in the trade, you'll probably watch them die or go to prison. Every peso you earn, you're earning by destroying someone else's life. Addicts, families, communities. And the worst part? You can convince yourself it's okay, that you're just surviving, that you don't have choices. I told myself those lies for 10 years, until the night I died in an alley in Mangueira with bullets in my chest and Jesus Christ standing over me offering one last choice. Lucas would show his scars, the bullet wound in his chest, millimeters from his heart. The doctors said this shot should have killed me instantly, but Jesus had other plans. He saved me because my mother prayed for me every day for 10 years. He saved me because he had a purpose for my life that wasn't dying in a gang war at 23. The testimonies reached people. Young men who'd been considering joining factions decided against it. Current faction members heard Lucas's story and began questioning their path. Mothers whose sons were in the trade found hope that change was possible. But the testimonies also made Lucas a target. The Comando Vermelho didn't forget traitors. Within the first year, there were 3 attempts on Lucas's life. The first came 6 months after his transformation. 2 CV soldados found out where Lucas was staying and ambushed him outside the safe house. They fired multiple shots. Lucas dove for cover, the bullets missing by inches. Police responded quickly, and the attackers fled. The second attempt came 9 months in. A motorcycle drove past Lucas on the street, the passenger firing a pistol at close range. Again, Lucas survived. The bullets hit the wall behind him, and he wasn't hit. The third attempt came at 11 months. Someone planted a bomb in a car Lucas was about to get into. A neighbor saw suspicious activity and called police, who discovered and disarmed the device hours before Lucas would have started the ignition. After each attempt, Pastor João would ask, "Do you want to stop testifying? We can relocate you somewhere quieter, where the CV won't find you." But each time, Lucas refused. Jesus didn't save me so I could hide. He saved me to testify. If I stop speaking because I'm afraid, then what's the point? The faction wins if I'm silent. "You could die," Pastor João warned. "I already died," Lucas replied. "In that alley in Mangueira. This life I'm living now, it's borrowed time, a gift I don't deserve. If Jesus wants to take me home after I've testified to his mercy, I'm okay with that. But I'm not stopping." 1 year after being shot in Mangueira, Lucas stood in a packed church in Rocinha, testifying to over 500 people about his transformation. "A year ago tonight, I was lying in an alley dying from bullet wounds. I'd spent 10 years in the drug trade. I'd made money, gained respect, and lost my soul. I was 23 years old and facing eternity not in heaven but in judgment for everything I'd done. And Jesus Christ appeared to me in that alley. In the gun smoke, in the blood, in the middle of a massacre he came, and he offered me something I'd never had, a real choice. Continue on the path that led to that alley and face eternal judgment, or surrender everything and follow him. I chose to surrender, and I'm not going to lie, this year has been hard. I've gone from making thousands of reais per week to minimum wage. I've survived 3 assassination attempts. I can't see my mother without putting her at risk. I've lost everything I built in the trade." Lucas paused, looking around at the crowd. Teenagers, young men, mothers, former gang members, people from all over Rio's favelas. "But I've gained something infinitely more valuable. I have peace, real peace, not the fake version the trade offers. I can sleep without nightmares. I can look at myself in the mirror without shame. I have a relationship with Jesus Christ that transforms everything. And I have purpose, not just surviving or making money, but actually helping people, warning them, showing them there's a different path." In the crowd, Lucas saw a teenage boy, maybe 15, wearing the colors and style of a local faction. The boy was listening intently, tears streaming down his face. After the service, the boy approached Lucas. "Mano, my name is Diego. I've been working as an olheiro for 8 months, making money, helping my family. But after hearing you, I don't want to end up dying in an alley before I'm 25. Can you help me get out?" Lucas put his hand on Diego's shoulder. "Yes, brother, it's going to be hard. The faction won't want to let you go. But if you're serious, if you really want out, we can help you. Jesus can save you before you go as deep as I went." Diego nodded. "I'm serious. I don't want that life." "Then come with me. Let's talk to Pastor João. Let's get you started on a different path." As Lucas walked Diego through the church to meet the pastor, he felt overwhelming gratitude. This was why Jesus had saved him, not just for his own sake, but for boys like Diego, for families torn apart by the trade, for communities destroyed by drugs and violence. One testimony, one transformed life, one boy choosing a different path. It was a small victory in a massive war, but it mattered. It was fruit from Lucas's surrender. 2 years after the massacre, Lucas stood on Copacabana Beach, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink over the Cristo Redentor statue, visible on the hillside. Beside him stood Pastor João and Lucas's mother Maria. They'd recently been able to reunite safely as the CV's interest in hunting Lucas had diminished with time and distance. "How do you feel? How do you feel?" Maria asked her son. "Grateful," Lucas said simply. "2 years ago, I was dying in an alley. Now I'm here, alive, free, doing work that matters." Lucas now worked full-time with Pastor João's ministry, leading programs specifically for former gang members trying to leave the trade. He'd helped 17 men successfully transition out of faction life. He'd spoken to thousands of young people in favelas across Rio, warning them about where the drug trade really leads. He'd also started studying, working toward his GED, then planning to attend seminary. He wanted to become a pastor, specifically serving Rio's favelas, bringing hope to places like Complexo do Alemao where he'd grown up. "Any regrets?" Pastor João asked. "About my 10 years in the trade? Absolute regret. I can't undo the damage I contributed to. But about making the choice to surrender when Jesus appeared? No regrets at all. This life, poor, vulnerable, threatened, it's infinitely better than what I had before, because it's real, it's honest. It's building something that lasts." Lucas's phone buzzed. A message from Diego, the teenage boy who'd approached him 2 years ago. "Mano, Lucas, I graduated high school today. First person in my family to finish school. Thank you for showing me there was a different way. I'm going to study to be a teacher. Going to help kids in the favelas like you helped me." Lucas showed the message to his mother and Pastor João. Maria started crying good tears. "That's why," Lucas said quietly. "That's why Jesus saved me. Not just for my sake. For boys like Diego, for families like mine, to show people, trapped in the trade, that there's another way." He looked up at the Cristo Redentor statue, Christ the Redeemer, arms outstretched over Rio, over the favelas, over the violence and poverty and struggle. "Jesus came to that alley for me when I was dying," Lucas said. "The least I can do is go to other alleys for him. Tell other dying men there's hope. That surrender isn't weakness. It's the only path to real freedom." As the sun disappeared below the horizon and Rio's lights began to twinkle across the hillsides, Lucas prayed quietly. "Jesus, thank you for that night 2 years ago. Thank you for appearing in the gunfire. Thank you for offering me a choice I didn't deserve. Use my story, use my mistakes, use my transformation. Let every testimony reach someone who needs to hear it. Let every boy I talk to see that this life, your life, is better than anything the trade offers. I surrender everything, every day. Use me however you want." Reflection, music, contemplative, urgent, offering hope even in darkness. Rio de Janeiro's favelas represent a unique kind of spiritual warfare. Systemic poverty, creating conditions where drug trafficking seems like the only viable economic option, where young boys watch their mothers work themselves to death for wages that won't buy shoes, where the trade offers money and respect that legitimate employment never could. It's easy to judge from the outside, to say, just don't sell drugs, to wonder why anyone would choose that life. But Lucas's story shows the complexity, limited options, desperate poverty, family responsibilities, and the seductive promise of money and respect. The trade doesn't recruit people by being obviously evil. It recruits them by offering what society has denied them: economic opportunity, community, purpose, belonging. And once you're in, getting out is almost impossible. The faction doesn't let you leave. Cooperation with police means death. The money becomes addictive. The violence becomes normal. Conscience gets buried under justification and survival instinct. But this story also shows something crucial. No one is beyond God's reach. Not drug dealers, not gang members, not people covered in blood and guilt. Jesus appeared in a massacre site, in the gunsmoke, in the middle of violence, and he offered mercy to a dying drug dealer who deserved judgment. That's the scandal of grace. It reaches people who don't deserve it, who haven't earned it, who are covered in sin. Because grace isn't about deserving. It's about God's character, not ours. If you're watching this from inside the drug trade, whether in Brazil, the United States, or anywhere else, hear this. You have choices. They're hard choices, dangerous choices, choices that might cost you everything. But the alternative, staying in the trade, leads to two places: prison or grave. You know this. Every veteran dealer knows this. The question is whether you'll get out before it's too late. Lucas almost didn't. He had 90 seconds between the bullets and death. Your margin might be even smaller. And if you're a parent whose child is in the trade, a mother like Maria Silva, praying desperately for a son who seems lost, hear this. Your prayers matter. Don't stop praying. Don't stop believing God can reach them. Maria prayed for 10 years. Her prayers built a bridge Jesus crossed to save Lucas. Your prayers can do the same. The Bible is clear. God desires that none should perish. That means even drug dealers, even gang members, even people society has written off as irredeemable. God hasn't written you off. He's offering the same choice. He offered Lucas, surrender everything and live, or continue the path that leads to death. Choose wisely, choose quickly, because tomorrow isn't promised. Lucas learned that in an alley in Mangueira with bullets in his chest. Don't wait until you're dying to surrender. Do it now. Walk away from the trade. Find a ministry that helps former gang members. Relocate if necessary. Lose the money, the reputation, the fake respect. Gain your soul. Gain your freedom. Gain your life. Jesus appeared in Rio's favelas because he loves people trapped there. He offers the same mercy to you that he offered Lucas. Complete forgiveness, total transformation, a new life. But you have to choose it. You have to surrender. You have to walk away from the old life and toward the new. It won't be easy. Lucas survived 3 assassination attempts, lost everything, started over from nothing. But he's alive. He's free. He's helping others escape. And most importantly, he's right with God, no longer facing judgment but living in grace. That's worth more than any amount of drug money, more than any reputation on the streets, more than anything the trade offers. Choose life. Choose surrender. Choose Jesus before it's too late.
Subscribe to Tales of God's Grace for more true miracles and stories of redemption. Your support helps us reach and restore families around the world. Don't forget to tag a friend and share this video, so together we can spread faith, love, and healing where it's needed most.